By now, most people know that From Software has a much larger catalog of games than just the Souls series. I mean, there's a new Armored Core coming out soon, which is awesome because Armored Core is amazing. But I actually like their older, more forgotten series, like Kingsfield, Shadow Tower, and Echo Knight. Both the first Echo Knight and the first Shadow Tower were released in 1998, so that seems to be the year From decided to dive headfirst into horror. And despite both of these games being part of shorter-lived, lesser-known series, the shift toward the gothic and the supernatural would leave a big mark on their later output. So today, it's time to step into the shoes of Richard Osmond and check out From Software's ghost story, Echo Knight. Echo Knight is essentially a first-person, horror-themed adventure game. Released for the PlayStation in 1998, it was initially snubbed by critics, as most of From Software's early output was. And I never really understood the indifference of 90s critics when it came to these games. Despite some technical limitations, the Kingsfield games are solid dungeon crawlers, incredibly well-designed and impressive in their scale. Shadow Tower, I sort of get the bad rap that it still receives, but it's a misunderstood gem. Armored Core did alright for the most part, thankfully, because it was the only thing keeping From Software afloat in those early days. Echo Knight fell in line with From's other first-person games, garnering mediocre reviews at best and less than stellar sales. But it's a well-paced, suitably creepy, tightly designed adventure, a ghost story wrapped around puzzle gameplay, sprinkled with some very light survival horror elements. From Software developed it as a sort of experiment using the Kingsfield 3 engine, and were so taken by the concept that they decided to greenlight a full game. Echo Knight takes place between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and concerns the exploits of Henry Osmond and his quest for a strange stone with supernatural powers. His fate intertwines with that of the Rockwell family, particularly William Rockwell and his granddaughter Crea. But I'm getting ahead of myself. All of that actually happens before the present day, 1937, when the game begins. One day, Richard Osmond, Henry's son, receives a letter from his father with a small key enclosed. Richard finds it strange that his father has sent him anything, since the two haven't been in touch for several years. As he ponders this strange correspondence, a phone call from the police informs him that his father's house has burned down. A police officer arrives to take Richard out to the house to have a look around. It's fine, you're family. Don't worry about crime scene contamination or tampering with evidence. You couldn't possibly be a suspect in this arson. Family members don't commit crimes against each other, especially not in the hope of receiving an insurance claim or some kind of inheritance. It just doesn't happen. Richard's father, Henry Osmond, was something of an eccentric artist, a painter, and while snooping around his burnt-out house, Richard discovers a secret passage behind a large grandfather clock and finds a red book in a crawl space. Upon inspecting it, he is seemingly drawn into the object. Richard comes to at a train station and boards a train that is about to depart. On board are a conductor, a young man, and a little girl with her grandfather. As Richard goes about investigating the train, he finds the conductor knocked out and uses an opening on top of one of the train cars to spy on the two men who are in the midst of a confrontation. The young man has his gun trained on the older one, but the old man has his own gun pointed at his granddaughter. He threatens to kill her unless the young guy puts down his weapon. It seems the younger man has been chasing after the older one for quite some time. The young guy lowers his gun, only to be shot by the old man. Dude, chill. You've already shot the guy, then you go and kick him in the head? Christ. The young man is still alive and goes off limping, but not before giving a small blue stone to the little girl. He tells her to keep the stone with her until their next meeting, because the stone will protect her. He introduces himself as Henry Osmond, Richard's father, and the young girl says her name is Crea Rockwell. The old man returns to find Henry missing, and they confront each other again on the last train car. Henry claims the old man is possessed by some kind of stone before jumping from the train. The old man, whose name is William Rockwell, produces a glowing red knife and muses about how he'll never give the stone up to anyone, before turning and seeming to notice Richard's presence. And there's a face that will forever be burned into my nightmares. Richard wakes up back in the crawl space and takes the red book. He then continues down a hidden stairway, where he finds a small room with a painting. After solving a simple puzzle, he is transported to the ocean liner Orpheus, which was lost at sea years before. This is where the majority of the game takes place, As Richard explores the ship, he meets many of its doomed passengers and crew, and helps to free their souls. However, not all the spirits on the ship are friendly, so it's not going to be as easy as just helping out a few ghosts. There are also multiple endings depending on the amount of souls you save and certain actions you take during the game, but we'll get into that later. For now, let's talk presentation. I love the look of the 32-bit era. The Saturn and the PlayStation are two of my favorite consoles of all time, and I think these early 3D graphics are immensely charming. Still, FromSoftware games are far from the most impressive on the PlayStation. They make up for it in their art direction though. Echo Knight presents a fairly unique setting, a gothic Victorian style with tons of flair. Since the size of this game is much smaller than Kingsfield or Shadow Tower, they could get away with crafting more objects and details in each of the rooms and areas of the game. Like I said, most of it takes place on the Orpheus. There are several different areas to the ship, including a bridge, passenger rooms, crew quarters, a theater room, engine compartments, as well as the upper decks. And the ambience is helped by the day-night cycle. The clock is always ticking, which doesn't have too much of an effect on gameplay, but if you go out onto the decks at certain times, you can see bright sunshine, a setting or rising sun, a moonlit night, or even rain. It's impressive. The ship isn't the only place you'll visit, as interacting with certain ghosts or objects will send you into the past. These include an amusement park, observatory, abandoned mine, a castle, and more. Each location has a lot of style and detail, and some of them are actually pretty big and you can wander around them. There's not a lot to see outside of your main objective in each of these places, but the fact that some of them are so explorable adds a lot to making the world feel believable. There are a fair amount of character models, and they all give off the feeling of old-fashioned dolls, something about their faces and the way they're dressed. It's really interesting. Most of the friendly ghosts appear as shadows. The enemy ghosts all have unique models. The one for the king is pretty terrifying, especially since you get to see him real up close during this one part. Whoa. As for the sound, you'll mostly be hearing your own footsteps, and the sounds of you interacting with objects. Though I will say, hearing these light switches is really satisfying. Especially with their tie to gameplay, which I'll get into shortly. For the most part, you'll be wandering around with just the ambience of the ship, which makes it creepy when you enter rooms with hostile ghosts. Hearing the creepy laugh of the little girl ghost or the ghastly moan of the ghost woman can really set you on edge. There are some musical tracks though, and they're mostly soft piano pieces and some other MIDI orchestrated tracks that fit the mood and the setting. The music overall is really good. There's a decent amount of voice acting as well. Not every line is voiced, but I'd say about 75% of it is. It's about what you would expect from a lower budget PS1 title.
Oh my God, how could I have forgotten about her? Forgive me, Christina.
Don't come any closer. Just turn around and leave. Go!
But there is one standout performance, the voice of the blind vendor, who's clearly hiding his true intentions.
This is a special potion that I've made. It may be weak, but it has the power to cure you when you are possessed. I believe this will be very useful for you.
I'm on to you, buddy. Early FromSoft games all had really weird control schemes. They're like tank controls, but with an extra degree of awkwardness because you're in first person. Up and down move you forward and back. Left and right turn the camera. The shoulder buttons strafe and look up and down. There is no analog stick support. Echo Knight does have a few different control schemes, and I went with the Kingsfield controls because I'm just used to them. But none of these are perfect solutions for the modern gamer. You'll get the hang of it though, or you won't, and you'll give up. Or just not play it at all and watch my video, which is cool too. But yeah, some people just love to rage about old controls and how awkward they were and how bad it was, and I just do not give a shit. just don't play it then. I don't care. Or use an emulator and rebind, whatever. I'd rather wash my mouth out with razor blades than listen to someone complain about tank controls. End of story. You've also got some other options in the menu. You can turn off the crosshair if you don't like it hogging up your screen real estate, but it does make it harder to pick up or interact with some items. You can also adjust the movement speed, which is another major complaint of old FromSoft games. You move as if you got 2 broken legs in Kingsfield and Shadow Tower. Echo Knight has different movement speeds for walking and turning. Slower, slow, normal, fast, and faster. I thought faster walk speed and fast turning felt quick and gave me enough control when looking around. Faster turning felt too unwieldy and made it hard to pick up items. Mainly what you'll be doing in Echo Knight is wandering around and collecting things. There are lots of little compartments and nooks and crannies where items can be, so it's important that you explore thoroughly. Some of the puzzles are just find item A to interact with or unlock item B, but there are some other pretty clever ones, and I had a lot of fun trying to figure them out. One of my favorites was an early one that involved 2 rooms across the hall from each other that were mirrored. I won't spoil the solution, but it was a great aha moment when I figured it out. There are also some mini games like slots, roulette, and blackjack that you can play in an optional casino area, and you'll want to do these if you're aiming to collect all the ghost spirits and get the best ending. Navigating the ship feels really satisfying thanks to the level design. FromSoftware has always been great at this, with pathways looping back on themselves and shortcuts connecting back to earlier areas in logical ways. You also get a fairly detailed map that can help you find your way around if you do get lost. Most of the ship is dark, and you'll want to find a nearby light switch as quickly as possible. If you don't turn on the lights, there's a chance that a malevolent ghost will appear and attack you. Each section of the ship has a different antagonist ghost. Turning on lights will drive them away, but the only way to truly banish them is to find an item related to their past, which will set their soul to rest. You don't have any means of attacking or defending yourself, and there are a couple spots where you'll have to run away from enemies while solving puzzles, which heightens the tension. You have a life bar represented by this blue stone in the corner. You can usually take a couple hits before death, but some ghosts have one-hit kill attacks. Luckily, the game stocks you full of cure potions, and you can trade astral pieces left behind by the ghosts that you've helped for holy waters, which are just weaker healing potions. The vendor says they help you when you're possessed, but I really don't know what the hell he's talking about. They're just lesser heal potions. Overall, though, this is probably one of FromSoftware's easiest games, so if the difficulty of their output has always turned you off, this one might just turn you on. God, I hate myself. Next, I'll dive into the story. It's a time-traveling mystery that doesn't really fall into the usual time travel paradox problems, since it's more supernatural in nature. But if you want to experience it for yourself, skip to this time. If not, let's exorcise some ghosts. After being sucked into the painting in his father's house, Richard finds himself on the deck of the Orpheus, and is approached by an apparition that turns out to be the captain. He bids Richard to follow him, and tells him to stay put in one of the rooms. So of course we aren't going to listen to that. Immediately after leaving the room he was told to stay in, Richard is assaulted by the ghost of a little girl, before being saved by a mysterious person who's flipped on the lights. Again, we're told to stay put, and again, no one tells Richard Osman what to do. Richard runs into a few other ghostly figures, and after helping them out by traveling into their memories and completing some simple puzzles related to their pasts, he frees them from their eternal imprisonment on board the ship. These ghosts leave behind floating orbs called astral pieces, which we can collect. The astral pieces can be traded to a mysterious blind merchant who resides inside a strange interdimensional room of sorts. This room can be accessed by using a certain book on these sun plaques that are scattered around the ship. The merchant reveals that he possesses an alien power and gives holy water in exchange for the astral pieces. Seems a bit sus, but we'll just stock up on the healing items while we can. He also gives Richard a broken blue stone, which is an important item for later. In the passenger area, Richard runs into a guy who won't let him pass until he meets the dress code. So we've got to help out a few other passengers and deal with the little girl ghost who's been harassing us. It's revealed in a memory that this girl is the daughter of a mine worker. She got lost and died inside the abandoned mine where her father used to work. Richard witnesses the father's discovery of her body, then steals the doll that was hers, and this grieving father's only connection to his now dead daughter. You're heartless, Richard. But upon his return to the ship, Richard returns the doll to the little girl, whose wrath is then subdued. This gives us access to a room with a spiffy dress suit, all nicely laid out. But before Richard can change into his new duds, he's knocked out cartoon style, and wakes up in a doctor's office. The evil spirit who chases us through this section is a woman who throws ghostly farts. After some more running around and collecting of items, Richard treats himself to a silent film. Oh, he hit him on the head with the board because he was interested in the woman. Oh, now he hit the woman. Hey, I was watching that. This next part of the film shows a murder that took place on the ship, committed by none other than William Rockwell using the same glowing red dagger that he had produced when he was on the train. The ghost doctor next to us mumbles something about how someone named Sir Arthur was killed with the knife and not poisoned as he had initially believed. Gee, Doc, you couldn't tell that the stab wound in the stomach wasn't the cause of death? After that, Richard finds himself back in the hallway with the guy who was blocking his path earlier. Now that Richard has his nice suit on, the spirit lets him by, which allows access to a large room where the ghosts of Arthur and Hilda Rockwell, son and daughter of William, await. These are the two who were killed in the memory we just watched in the theater. So William killed his own kids. Arthur and Hilda reveal that they saw how the red dagger had possessed their father, so they were planning on killing him on the ship, but William saw through their plot and got to them first. Great family you got there, Rockwells. Richard is transported into the castle painting hanging on the wall behind the two ghosts, where he witnesses the murder of a king by a mercenary. The king was in possession of the red stone, which is what allowed him to take power. This mercenary, who turns out to be a Rockwell ancestor, Alan, takes possession of the stone before noticing Richard's presence. Again, great family you got there, Rockwells. Upon returning to the ship, Arthur tasks Richard with finding 4 stone plates to gain access to where William Rockwell is currently laying low. So this next section boils down to a MacGuffin hunt to unlock a door. Richard takes care of the ghost lady by distracting her with an animatronic crow, which is just... okay, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. Hey, what's that? Is that a fucking crow? Oh shit! My only weakness. He finds a shattered version of one of the plates and is transported to a graveyard where he enters a crypt and finds William Rockwell. William offers to help Richard to safety, but instead leads him to a murder room where he finds the body of the young woman who has become the evil spirit on the ship. After taking her pendant, William attacks, but Richard runs and manages to get hold of the plate and take it back to the present. Because Richard also has the pendant now, he can finally subdue the ghost of the woman. Next, Richard agrees to help a ghost save his mates in the crew quarters. In this area, we're nagged by the ghost of the king, who is probably the most monstrous looking enemy in the game, and we get real up close and personal with him right from the get-go. Richard is saved by his own father, Henry, who flips on the lights and mutters something about how he's not the same person he was when he met the little girl in the train, before wandering off. Richard helps out the ghostly crew members and receives the final 2 plates. After placing them around the door, Richard then gets a chance to meet more of the dysfunctional Rockwell family in their own private quarters aboard the ship. This leads to another trip back to the castle to inspect the king's corpse and take a cameo off of him, which I had to look up because I had no idea what it was. But apparently, it's this Victorian piece of jewelry which has an engraving on it. This particular one is engraved with an image of the king's daughter. Showing it to the ghost king banishes him for good, and Richard confronts William Rockwell, who's just a feeble old man who doesn't even remember all the shit he's done. The one important piece of information William does reveal is that Kreia, the young girl from the train, spent most of her life trying to protect the blue stone she was given, and also trying to find Richard's father Henry again. This takes Richard into a memory where he witnesses Kreia's death at the hands of a hired assassin. After this scene, William reveals that Henry has already taken the red stone from him and is now possessed by it. But Richard might be able to end things by combining the 2 blue stones. So William sends Richard into the past again, where he steals the bullet that Kreia loaded into her gun. This saves her from one of the hired assassins, but another one was waiting outside the house, and Kreia dies anyway. But hey, we got that other blue stone at least. We can collect the last of the astral pieces from the Rockwell family ghosts, and if you've helped out all the ghosts up to this point, giving the final ones to the merchant will allow him to create another red stone, which he disappears with. And this scene is tied to the multiple endings of the game. The final confrontation takes place in the ship's engine room, where Richard confronts his father, who is under the spell of the red stone. William's ghost then appears and chases Richard throughout the ship as he tries to complete this damn puzzle where he has to overpressurize the engines. This makes the emergency lights turn on, banishing William's ghost, and destroying the protective barrier that was around the red stone. Richard combines the blue stone he's been carrying with the other blue stone that was once Kreia's, and the red stone is destroyed. All that's left to do is escape the ship within the time limit, and this leads to one of 4 different endings. The worst one is not making it to the other side of the engine room in time, which is almost impossible to do unless you just let it happen. In this ending, the ship explodes with Richard on it, and you get a text crawl saying that Richard disappeared inside his father's house. The other ending, which many consider Richard, the best one, has you reaching the other side of the ship in time, where you'll meet with the ghost of Kreia, who will use her own ghost magic or something to transport Richard off the ship. We then get a scene of Richard in his own home, listening to a music box and remembering Kreia. And during this happy montage, we get a shot of the bad timeline where Kreia was shot in the back. Real mood killer there. Another ending is related to the red stone that the merchant created. By inspecting this sigil on the wall in the final area of the ship, you can open a secret compartment, where the merchant will offer Richard the red stone. If you take it, you still meet with Kreia, who transports you off the ship, but Richard is woken up in his father's house again by the police officer who let him in. Richard follows him back to the front door and stabs him with the red stone knife. An evil ending for sure. The last ending occurs when you don't collect all of the astral pieces. You still meet with Kreia, who transports you off the ship, and you wake up back in Henry's house. You leave with the police officer, but the car doesn't start, and when the officer asks you to look in the back for some tools, the red stone knife is sitting in the back of the patrol car. All four of the endings are pretty interesting, but yeah, the best, and I guess canon ending, would be the one where you save everyone and don't take the evil stone dagger. Overall, I think the story in Echo Knight is entertaining. You just don't really want to take too deep of a look at it. Like, I don't know why we're even on the Orpheus. I guess it's because that's where the red stone disappeared when the ship was lost at sea. But how did Richard's father know that William had the red stone in the first place? Where'd the blue stone come from? How did Henry come into possession of it? Then there's the merchant. I guess he's probably the devil or some other kind of evil entity. But yeah, I don't know, nothing's really explained or even given any clues or anything. It's just a story that drives this neat little atmospheric adventure game. So I guess there's no need to think too hard about it. It's fun, it's got a cool setting, good puzzles, some action, some spookiness. Moving on. Echo Knight is a tightly paced, well-designed adventure game that does a great job at creating tension and unease with its malevolent spirits and light-switching mechanics. The level design, art direction, and music are all fantastic, and even if the foundations of the story are a bit shaky, everything that happens is fun to watch unfold, even if it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And that's cool, because the puzzles are satisfying, and it's a game that doesn't overstay its welcome, clocking in at about 4 or 5 hours to finish. I like the first Echo Knight a lot, and there are 2 more sequels in the series that I'll probably get around to someday. The second game was released a year later and uses the same engine, but is a much bigger game, both in story and in setting. The third game came out on the PS2 and takes the ghost story memory hunting concept into a sci-fi setting, with some other new gameplay mechanics as well. It's probably the most interesting of the 3 games, and it's also FromSoftware's last original first-person game. So that's something. Anyway, that's it for Echo Knight. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, it would really help me out if you gave it a like and maybe commented something if you're feeling so inclined. I also have some other videos to watch on the channel, so if you're not subscribed yet, do that and check them out. And I also have a Twitter where you can follow me. Link in the description below. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. So for now, I'll say Echo Knight. Check it out. Dungeon Chill. Out.